We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Subscribe right now. Hit that notification bell. Turn on every
We are following a new and deeply sensitive development connected to the wider public discussion surrounding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. And before we go any further, one thing has to be made absolutely clear. At this time, there has been no official confirmation that the woman found near a Phoenix canal is connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. That matters. Because in a case like this, emotion can move faster than evidence. Fear can move faster than facts. And when a missing person case has already captured the attention of thousands of people, any new discovery can send the internet into overdrive before investigators have even completed the basic identification process. But this development cannot be ignored either. A woman was reportedly found unresponsive near a canal area in Phoenix. Emergency responders arrived. A death investigation began. The medical examiner became involved. And almost immediately, people following Nancy Guthrie's case began asking the same painful question. Could this be connected? That question is difficult. It is painful. It is uncomfortable. But it is also understandable. Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old woman, vanished from her home under circumstances that investigators have treated as deeply concerning. For weeks, her family, law enforcement, and the public have been waiting for answers. Every confirmed update has been studied. Every official statement has been examined. Every small detail has been placed under a microscope. So when a woman's body is discovered in the same state, even many miles away, people naturally begin connecting possibilities. But real investigations do not move on emotion. They move on identification. They move on evidence. They move on timelines. They move on forensic results. They move on facts that can be confirmed, not theories that only feel possible. And that is where this story begins. Because the Phoenix Canal discovery has reopened public attention, but it has not answered the central question. Where is Nancy Guthrie? From the beginning, Nancy's disappearance has carried a troubling weight. This was not a case that could easily be explained away. It was not a simple situation where someone packed a bag, left a note, and chose to disappear. Public reporting and investigative discussion have repeatedly focused on the unusual circumstances surrounding her home, her physical limitations, and the possibility that someone else may have been involved. That is why every new development matters. Not because every discovery is automatically connected, but because the case remains open. And when a case remains open, every serious lead must be treated carefully. The Phoenix discovery created immediate concern because of timing. For families of missing people, timing is everything. A report comes in. A body is found. An identity is unknown. And until the medical examiner completes the process, families are trapped in a painful space between fear and hope. It is one of the cruelest parts of a missing person case. The family cannot ignore the news, but they also cannot accept it as truth. They must wait. They must wait for investigators. They must wait for forensic confirmation. They must wait for the kind of answer no family should ever have to prepare for. And while they wait, the public often begins to speculate. That speculation can be dangerous. Because in true crime communities, people sometimes confuse possibility with fact. A location sounds suspicious, so people treat it as evidence. A distance seems possible, so people turn it into a theory. A rumor spreads, and within hours, it becomes something people repeat as if law enforcement confirmed it. That is how misinformation takes over. And the Nancy Guthrie case has already shown how quickly false claims can spread. Earlier in the investigation, online rumors reportedly circulated about another supposed discovery. People shared theories. Viewers reacted. Some believed the case had taken a major turn. But authorities later pushed back against misinformation, reminding the public that unverified claims can harm the investigation and hurt the family. That lesson is important now. Because this Phoenix Canal discovery is real. But its connection to Nancy Guthrie has not been officially confirmed. Those are two separate things. A woman was found. An investigation began. The identity had not been publicly released at the time of discussion. But Nancy Guthrie remained missing unless and until authorities stated otherwise. That is the line responsible coverage must hold. Still, there are reasons people reacted strongly. Phoenix is not a random place in the public conversation around this case. It is Arizona's largest city. It is a major transportation hub. It connects highways, airports, and routes across the state. If investigators were considering movement, transportation, or a wider geographic area, Phoenix would naturally draw attention. But attention is not proof. Distance is also part of the discussion. Nancy Guthrie was last associated with the Tucson area, specifically the Catalina foothills region. Phoenix is a significant distance away. For a healthy person with access to transportation, that distance may not seem impossible. But for an elderly woman with reported mobility limitations, the idea of traveling that distance alone raises serious questions. That is why people are asking whether, if there were any connection, someone else would have had to move her. But again, that is only a question. It is not a conclusion. And this is where the investigation becomes delicate. If the Phoenix case has no connection to Nancy, then another family is now facing tragedy. Another woman deserves to be identified. Another death investigation deserves respect. That person cannot be reduced to a rumor in someone else's case. But if investigators were ever to confirm a connection, then the meaning of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance would shift dramatically. It would raise new questions about transportation. It would raise new questions about planning. It would raise new questions about whether more than one person was involved. It would raise new questions about why Phoenix mattered. It would raise new questions about the timeline after Nancy vanished. That is why the medical examiner's role is so important. In cases like this, identification is not guesswork. Investigators do not identify a person because the public thinks it looks possible. They use science. They use records. They use physical comparison. They use fingerprints if available. They use dental records. They use DNA. Now we move deeper into the question that has surrounded this latest development. Why did the discovery near a Phoenix canal cause such an immediate reaction from people following the Nancy Guthrie case? The answer is not simple. It is not because investigators confirmed a connection. They have not. It is not because the woman found in Phoenix has been publicly identified as Nancy. She has not. It is not because the case is suddenly solved. It is not. The concern comes from the combination of timing, geography, Nancy's reported physical condition, and the larger unanswered questions that have surrounded her disappearance from the very beginning. And when those factors come together, people begin to look at the Phoenix discovery differently. They begin asking whether this could be another unrelated tragedy, or whether it could be a clue that changes the direction of the investigation entirely. According to the script you provided, emergency responders were called to the Grand Canal Trail area in Phoenix after reports of an unresponsive adult female near the canal bank. The woman was pronounced dead at the scene, and the medical examiner's office began the process of determining her identity and cause of death. That alone is serious. But because Nancy Guthrie remains missing, the public reaction was immediate. People following the case began asking the same question at the same time. Could it be her? That question is painful, but it is also understandable. When an elderly woman disappears under suspicious circumstances, and later an unidentified woman is found deceased in the same state, people naturally begin comparing the two events. They look at distance. They look at timing. They look at whether the discovery location makes sense. They look at whether there was any possible route from one place to another. But real investigations do not work on emotional connection alone. They require confirmation. That is why the identity process matters so much. Until the medical examiner officially identifies the woman found in Phoenix, there is no confirmed connection to Nancy Guthrie. That is the line that must not be crossed. Still, the reason this development became so powerful is because Nancy's disappearance already had troubling elements. Nancy was not a young, highly mobile person who could easily travel long distances alone. She was 84 years old. Public discussion around the case has repeatedly mentioned limited mobility. That makes distance important. Phoenix is not next door to the Catalina foothills. It is far away. The area connected to Nancy's disappearance is near Tucson. The Phoenix Canal discovery happened roughly 2 hours away by car. For a person with mobility issues, that distance is not just inconvenient. It becomes a major investigative question. Could Nancy have gotten there alone? That appears unlikely based on what has been publicly discussed. So if, and only if, the Phoenix discovery were ever confirmed to be connected to Nancy, the next question would be much darker. Who moved her? That question changes everything. Because a person disappearing from her own home is one thing. A person being moved across a major distance is something else. It suggests planning. It suggests transportation. It suggests control. It suggests that whoever was involved may have known where to go, how to travel, and how to avoid immediate detection. That is why the Phoenix angle created such concern. Not because it proves anything, but because if it were connected, it would suggest Nancy's disappearance was not random, not accidental, and not limited to one neighborhood. It would suggest a wider movement after the original event. And that would raise a new set of questions. Was there a vehicle involved? Was there more than one person involved? Was Phoenix chosen for a reason? Was the Canal area random or was it familiar to someone? Did someone travel there immediately or did time pass first? Did investigators already have reason to look toward Phoenix? Those are serious questions. But again, they are questions, not conclusions. And in a case as sensitive as this, that distinction matters. One of the strongest points in your reference script is the warning about misinformation. The script highlights that earlier rumors connected to supposed body discoveries had already spread online and later had to be corrected. That is exactly why this Phoenix development must be handled carefully. Because when a case becomes popular online, the public can become both helpful and harmful. Helpful because more eyes mean more people watching, remembering, and sharing official information. Harmful because speculation can quickly become rumor, and rumor can quickly become something people mistake for truth. A single post can spread across social media within minutes. A vague headline can become a false confirmation. A guess can turn into a claim. A claim can turn into a viral theory. And before the family or investigators have answers, thousands of people may already believe something that has not been proven. That is dangerous. It can hurt the investigation. It can mislead the public. It can waste investigators' time. And most importantly, it can cause unbearable pain for the families involved. Because in this situation there may be two families suffering. Nancy Guthrie's family is waiting for answers about her disappearance. And the woman found in Phoenix, whoever she is, also has a family, loved ones, and a story. She should not be treated as a clue before she is treated as a person. That is important. True crime coverage must remember the humanity behind every case. If the woman found near the canal is not Nancy, then she is still someone who deserves dignity, identification, and justice if a crime occurred. If she is connected to another missing person case, that family deserves answers. If her death was accidental or medical, that truth still matters. And if investigators eventually confirm a connection to Nancy, then that confirmation must come from official sources, not from internet speculation. That is why the medical examiner's process is so important. Identification is not a social media vote. It is a scientific and legal process. Investigators may use fingerprints if they are available. They may use dental records. They may use DNA. They may compare medical records. They may review clothing, personal items, physical characteristics, and any identifying marks. Sometimes identification is fast. Sometimes it is not. The condition of the body can affect the process. The availability of comparison records can affect the process. Now we move into the part of this case where emotion must slow down and evidence must take over. Because after the Phoenix Canal discovery, the public reaction was immediate. People wanted answers. They wanted a name. They wanted confirmation. They wanted to know whether this discovery had anything to do with Nancy Guthrie. But in real investigations, the most important answers are not always the fastest ones. They have to be verified. They have to be tested. They have to be documented. And when a body is found under uncertain circumstances, investigators cannot simply rely on public pressure, online speculation, or similarity between two stories. They have to follow a process. That process begins with identification. And identification is not just a formality. It is the foundation of everything that comes next. According to the script you provided, authorities had not publicly identified the woman found near the Phoenix Canal, and the medical examiner's office was responsible for determining both identity and circumstances surrounding the death. That detail matters because until the woman is officially identified, no responsible person can say whether she is connected to Nancy Guthrie's case. The internet may guess. Comment sections may explode. Videos may be made. People may compare details. But law enforcement cannot work from guesses. They need proof. And in a case this sensitive, proof must come before conclusion. The medical examiner's office plays a critical role here. When someone is found deceased and unidentified, the first responsibility is to determine who that person is. That can involve several methods, depending on the condition of the body and the information available. Investigators may look for fingerprints. They may compare dental records. They may use DNA testing. They may check medical records. They may examine clothing, jewelry, scars, surgical history, or other physical identifiers. They may compare missing person reports. They may contact families. They may review where the person was found and whether any belongings were nearby. Every step matters. Because a wrong identification would be devastating. It would harm the family. It would mislead the public. It would damage the investigation. And it could delay justice for the person who was actually found. That is why the waiting period is so difficult but so necessary. People want to know immediately. Families need to know immediately. But investigators must be right. Not almost right. Not probably right. Right. That is the difference between internet speculation and official investigation. And this is where the Nancy Guthrie case becomes especially painful. Because Nancy's family is already living through uncertainty. They have already endured the fear of not knowing where she is. Every new discovery in Arizona may feel like a threat to their hope. Every report of an unidentified woman may feel like the beginning of a phone call they have been dreading. That is why public discussion must be careful. A headline can hurt. A rumor can hurt. A false confirmation can hurt. A careless theory can hurt. And in a case involving a missing elderly woman, that pain is magnified because the family is already trapped between fear and hope. They do not have the luxury of treating this as a mystery. For them, this is personal. This is daily. This is grief without an answer. That is why part 3 of this investigation is not only about evidence. It is also about responsibility. The responsibility of investigators to verify. The responsibility of the public to wait. The responsibility of creators to avoid turning uncertainty into certainty. Because the Phoenix discovery may be important. Or it may be completely unrelated. Both possibilities must remain open until authorities say otherwise. That is difficult for people online. True crime audiences often want movement. They want a breakthrough. They want a moment where the case turns. They want the one discovery that finally explains everything. But real cases rarely unfold so cleanly. Sometimes a discovery that looks connected is not connected at all. Sometimes a rumor that sounds convincing collapses under review. Sometimes a location that feels meaningful turns out to be coincidence. Sometimes the truth is less dramatic than the theory. And sometimes the truth is worse. That is why investigators cannot skip steps. If the woman found near the Phoenix Canal is not Nancy Guthrie, then she still deserves to be identified. Her family deserves answers. Her case deserves attention. Her death deserves a full investigation. She cannot become only a possible connection to another headline. She was a person. And if her case is separate, then treating her only as part of Nancy's story would be unfair and irresponsible. But if the woman were ever confirmed to be Nancy, then the investigation would change immediately. The focus would no longer be only on disappearance. It would become a question of movement, timeline, location, and cause of death. How did she get from the Tucson area to Phoenix? When did she get there? Was she alive when she left the original area? Was she transported by one person or more than one person? What vehicle was used? Was there surveillance along the route? Was the Phoenix location chosen deliberately? Was it meant to hide evidence? Was it meant to delay discovery? Was it connected to someone familiar with that area? Those questions would become urgent. And investigators would likely begin working backward from the recovery location. They would look for cameras near the canal. They would review traffic routes. They would check nearby businesses. They would examine gas stations, parking lots, highway exits, and surrounding streets. They would ask whether any suspicious vehicle was seen in the area. They would compare the possible time of death with Nancy's disappearance timeline. They would review phone data. They would search for digital devices that moved between Tucson and Phoenix. They would look for any suspect who had a connection to both areas. That kind of investigation is complex. It requires coordination. It requires time. And it requires evidence that can hold up later. Because finding a person is only one part of the case. Proving what happened is another. That is why cause and manner of death would become critical. If the medical examiner determines the death was accidental, that points one direction. If the death was natural, that points another. If the death was suspicious or homicidal, the investigation changes entirely.